Okay, so just a few words about me. I work for Zend Technologies. I'm a PHP developer. I started to develop since 1996, so I used a lot of different languages, and I use PHP since 1999. Starting from 2011, I started to work in the group of Zend Framework. And by the way, if you have any question, if you don't understand my English, please stop me. I will repeat, so no problem. Okay. Start the presentation. This is the summary. So I would like to introduce you to Zend Framework 2, that, as you know, is still in development. So it's quite difficult for me, because the source code is in beta. But I will give you, the main feature. So we will have an overview about the auto-loading system, the dependency injection, the event manager, and I would like to share with you Zend skeleton application that is basically a quick start. So it's a very simple application that you can use to start new projects using Zend Framework 2. And last but not least, I would like to spend some words on how to migrate from Zend Framework 1 to Zend Framework 2. And first of all, how many of you are using Zend Framework 2? Please. Okay. So the new feature of Zend Framework 2 is a completely new architecture. So it's the evolution of Zend Framework 1, but I will say that it's a completely different project. So we have a new MVC, we have the DI, that is dependency injection design pattern. I will spend a few words about this design pattern later. There are a couple of course we have a new concept that are the events. So everything in the workflow of Zend Framework 2 is an event. The requirement for Zend Framework 2 is PHP 5.3. So that means that basically Zend Framework 2 is not backward compatible to Zend Framework 1. We don't have anymore the contributor license agreement. So if you want to contribute to the Zend Framework 2 project, you don't have to sign, any kind of documents. You just use GitHub, and that is very, very easy to do. So we are not using anymore SVN, we are using GitHub. And of course, we spend a lot of time to try to improve the performance of Zend Framework. We built a module management system. That means you can write module for your application, and you can reuse this module for the other application. So for instance, if you develop a login system, so username and password, a typical authentication system, you can reuse this authentication system in all your projects. So that's a very good feature. And we have also a packaging system. We use Pyrus for this feature. And I will show you how to package your project in Zend Framework 2, how to distribute, to deploy using this mechanism. So basically, we have a new core. In Zend Framework 1, the main design pattern was the singleton, the registry, and basically all the classes was hard-coded. So that means you have to declare your classes in your controller, in your model, whatever. And when the project becomes very complex, it's quite difficult to manage all the dependency between all the objects. So we decided to use a new approach in Zend Framework 2. So we basically use the aspect-oriented design, and we use dependency injection to manage the complexity of the project. So basically, we have a new methodologies. We have decoupling using ZendDI. We have event-driven using Zend Event Manager. That is a new class that is able to manage the events inside your project. And we built standard interfaces. We have a library that is Zend standard lib, and we put all the standard library into this namespace. So basically, the idea was to take, of course, the advantage of PHP 5.3. So as you know, there are a lot of new features in the languages, like the namespace, like the closure, and of course, better performance. So that's the background. Okay, now I will show you a couple of new features. The first is the autoloading. So we don't have any more required ones. So that is a good news. So you can use your classes without, worrying about the requirement, the include or the requirements of your classes. We have 3 different autoloading systems. The first is the Zend Framework 1 style. So nothing new. The second is an autoloading system based on namespace or prefix. That means you can say, okay, all the classes that have this namespace are located in this folder. Or you can use a prefix. That means all the classes that start with this string are located in this another folder. And we have a third autoloading system that is the class map. It is a new idea. So basically, you have an array, associative array, so with key and value, where the key is the namespace of the class, and the value is the full path of the class. Of course, we provided a tool, a command line tool, that is able to generate this associative array. So you don't have to be crazy, to discover all the classes in your project. You can just use this simple tool that is a script that is able to auto-generate all the list of all the classes in your project with the position, location of each file. So why we decided to implement this class map? Because the performance improvement are huge. So if you compare the performance of the autoloading system of Zend Framework 1 with the new autoloading system of Zend Framework 2, you get this kind of performance improvement. So for instance, if you use PHP without any opcode, like the normal PHP that you download from php.net, without APC, without Zend Optimizer Plus, anything, you have 25% of improvement, just using the new autoloading system. If you are using PHP with APC or Zend Optimizer Plus, you can get this kind of performance improvement from 60 to 85%. So are very, very good, Even if you don't use the class map, but if you use the second options for the autoloading system, you get, from 10% to 40% of performance improvement. We just backported also this autoloading system into Zend Framework 1. So the next version of Zend Framework 1 will be the 1.12, and we are going to release, I guess, at the end of this month or beginning of May. And you can use this class map autoloading system even in Zend Framework 1 projects. So you can check. It's very simple. Just change the configuration of the autoloading system using the class map, just to to compare the performance between the two autoloading systems. Any questions so far? One question. Okay. Well, the question was why you don't use postfix autoloading system, right? That's the question. So basically, we, as you know, every feature in Zend Framework, we have a community, we have a voting system, we have a lot of people involved, and at the end of all the discussion, this was the three autoloading system. But the idea of postfix is almost in the class map. So we used the idea of postfix. We just rename it in a class map autoloading system. So it's very similar in some way. Okay. Next topics, dependency injection. Do you know what is dependency injection? Who know what is dependency injection? Okay, so I can skip this part. Okay, for people who don't know what is dependency injection, here there is a very short definition. So basically the idea is we have a project. Of course, we are writing software using object-oriented paradigm. So we have a lot of classes. We generate a lot of objects, and most of the time this object interacts with other objects. So there is a huge map of interaction between objects. And if the project becomes very complex, it's difficult to manage all this link between objects. So the design dependency injection is a design pattern that basically is able to manage the complexity. Okay, here we have an example. So for instance, we have a class foo, and in the construct of the class, we instantiate another object with the class bar. So this is without DI. And where is the problem here? Basically, you have to remember that you have in your construct the instance of a new class, because it's hard-coded. So instead of just instantiate here a new object, you can just inject the object into the class. Here there is an example in a construct. So this is better than this because it's more easy to test. We have the coupling, so we separate the two objects basically, and the architecture is more flexible. Of course, you can do the same using a setter, so just to inject another object. This is the general idea. We implemented a class that is Zend DI, that is basically a DI container. That means this class is able to manage the dependency using a configuration file, and I will show you an example, or an annotation. So we use PHP doc, to generate basically to say that this class depends on the other class and so on. We provided also a compiler that is a tool that is able to auto-discover the dependency in your code. And I will show you an example. This is a sample definition. So we have the definition, if I go back here. So we have this class foo that use the class bar. We have the class foo. We have a method that is set bar. The type of the parameter is the class bar, and is a required parameter. That means when you have to instantiate the class foo, you have to pass the parameter bar. So this is the definition. If you use DI, so basically the idea is to pass the definition into the DI container, and when you retrieve the class foo, it will contain the class bar. So the idea here is that when you get the class foo, the DI container is able to instantiate the class bar. So that's the idea. We have also annotation. So instead of pass a configuration file that is the array that I showed before. You can just use an annotation system. So we're using this syntax. So we say that at the I inject, that means that this method, set bar, should be injected. And we have here in this slide is reported the compiling time. So basically, you can define the definition of your compiler. You pass the directory where you have the foo and the bar classes. And basically, you can get the class, and the I is able to instantiate the bar before you use the class. If you want to know more about ZenDI, here I reported the URL of the Ralph Schindler, that is my colleague in Zend, the guy that wrote the ZenDI container. And here you can find a lot of different use cases. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Right now we are going to support just array directly and annotation. Yeah, so the idea is basically we have ZFConf, that is a class that's able to manage, inify, YAML, whatever, and you can easily use ZFConf to generate this structure. There is also an example in the documentation how you can do that, because the idea is using this definition, this array, this is the best way to improve the performance of a DI container, because we are writing PHP code. So if you use directly a definition like that, the real question is how I can generate this definition. By hand, of course, it's difficult if you have a lot of classes, a complex project. This is why you can use, for instance, ZenConfig that is able to auto-generate this structure. Yeah.
But Symfony now provides 3 ways
yeah.
to create some configuration by annotation.
Yes.
And like XML and YAML.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very useful.
Yeah, but it's the same here. I mean, if you see the implementation of Symfony, inside it's exactly this. So we don't want to, how can I say this? We don't want to provide you a tool that is too heavy, because if you see the implementation of Symfony, inside there is something like the ZenConfig. At the end of the game, it converts in an array. So we provide directly this. If you want to use, it's just one line. You have just to say, okay, ZenConfig, generate array, and that's it. It's too light. The ZenDI in this way is too light compared with the other implementation. That's why the general idea behind the Zend Framework 2 is to try to reduce the amount of code as much as possible. That's the idea. But if you can do the same. Okay, other question? Oh, please, bad question. Okay, Event Manager. This is a new design pattern in Zend Framework 2. So basically, what is the Event Manager? Is an object that aggregates listener. Listener is just a callback. So you can have a listener to a function, listener for method of classes or whatever. And of course, event is an action. Here there is an example, a very, very, stupid example, but just to give you an idea. We have a Zend event manager. We are attaching to the event manager an event. This is the name of the event, do. And this is just a function, a closure that just print the name of the function and the parameter. You have a parameter here, so just an array. And you can trigger the events using the method trigger. So you specify the name. Here you specify the location. So that means, in this case, the function do is in the class name of this piece of code. But here you can have also, you can specify the classes. So that means that the event do lives in this location. And you can pass the parameter. So it's very, very simple. Why we use event manager? Because in the workflow of the new MVC of Zend Framework 2, everything is an event. That's the idea. Okay. So the new MVC of Zend Framework 2, this is, by the way, this is the diagram of Matthew when we started to, how we can implement the new MVC of Zend Framework 2. So we wrote, because, we are old people, so we prefer to write on a piece of paper before to, start using an iPad or whatever. So this is the idea. Everything is an event. So the bootstrap, the routing system, the dispatching, the response, everything is just an event. So we have a static manager event in all your application, and you can insert your event. You can change the priority of the event. You can do whatever you want. That means it's very, very powerful, but sometimes it's also dangerous because you have to know how to manage the event, of course. So we have event, but we have also modules. That means you can even in Zend Framework 1 there is a way to manage modules in your application. So but Zend Framework 1 was not built with the idea of module. So Zend Framework 2, we provided a way to manage the modules. So what are modules? Modules is just a collection of code and other files that solve a more specific atomic problem of the larger business problem. Remember, when I start the presentation, I say, okay, we have module. For instance, the authentication system is a module. So you write one time, and you can just reuse in all your application. So a module is just a namespace and a single class file that is module.php. And I will show you in the skeleton application what means modules. Okay, so let's start to see this skeleton application. So what is a simple application to start to, to work with Zend Framework 2. This is the location. And this is, of course, we use GitHub for all our code. So it's very easy to, to get the project. Here we are using the Git submodules. So that means if you want to clone this application, Zend skeleton application, you have to use the parameter -- recursive. This is very important because the idea here is if you want to run this application, you need, of course, Zend Framework 2. Zend Framework 2, we manage using Git submodules. That means inside the source code of Zend skeleton application, there is a folder, and we show you that is the name of vendor. Inside this folder, there is all the library of Zend Framework 2. But the code is not there. Is a link to the repository of Zend Framework 2. these are the submodules, basically. And this example works with the last beta, that is the beta 3. And by the way, we are going to release the beta 4 at the start of May. There will be a beta 5, and hopefully, in the beginning of summer, the Zend Framework 2 stable release. So you have to wait a couple of months. Okay, this is the folder tree. So we have basically 5 folders. The first is the configuration. We have a folder that is data, where we put data like caching. We have the folder with module, the folder with vendor, where we put the library Zend Framework 2, or if you have already in your include path of PHP, you can just use that. So this is optional. And we have the classic public folder, where we have CSS, images, JavaScript, .htaccess, that is the same as the Framework 1, and the index.php. Of course, we have a couple of subfolders here. So the module contains the list of all the modules of your application. In this example, we have just one, that is application. And inside the application, we have the configuration for the module. So we have a folder that is config. We have the source code of the module. This is after the source code, we have just one folder application that is the same name of the module. And inside that folder, we have the controllers of the module. And of course, we have also the folder that contains the view. A module must contain a class that is module.php. So this is the only requirement for a module. And we have also here a couple of classes that, by the way, are generated with the tools that I mentioned before, that are the autoload class map, autoload function, and autoload register. I mean, this is just an example. Of course, you can have a completely different structure in your project, but this is just a quick start. If you want to start to use the Framework 2, you can start from here, and after you can customize your application. This is the output. It's just one page, so it's very, it's a toy example. It's a static page. Okay, let's go to have a look at the index.php. So basically here we have a couple of lines of code. So we have the autoloading system. So here is the part where you configure your autoloading system. We are using the default one. So we have an autoloader factory class. We are including the configuration. So we put the configuration of this application inside the folder config, and the name of the file is application.config.php. You can see here, this is a nice way to read a PHP configuration file and assign to a variable using, the include in this way. That's why we use, configuration file that are basically return an array, because in this way it's very, very fast. Here we specify the module, so we are saying, okay, we have this application, we have these modules, and of course we are using a configuration file here. So these lines are just to say we want to use modules, and the modules are located here, and I will show you the configuration for that. So the index.php, this is the second page. We just here, aggregate, all the modules together, and we are using the Zend MVC. That is the new class, for the application. So we have a bootstrap phase and the application phase. At the end of the game, application run Zend. So this is the main, this is actually similar to the Zend application of Zend Framework 1. So you have the slide, so you can see the details after. Now I just want to give you the general idea behind this example. This is the configuration file. So under the config folder, we have application.config.php. That is just, this piece of code. So here we specify the list of all the modules of the application. So in this case, we have just, application. And in the module listener option, we specify the options. So here we are saying, for instance, where is the cache dir, data/cache, and where are the modules, the path of the modules. So we can have module inside the folder module, or even inside the module, the vendor folder. That means you can reuse different modules from different, application. You can decide where to, store the modules, of course. Here we have another configuration folder that is named autoload, where we put all the autoloading system. We have a global configuration file. That means here you insert all the configuration, the general configuration about your application. And here we have a local config PHP with a git in your, that basically means that these files are not stored in the Git repository, because typically here you can specify, the username, the password, or whatever. So it's specific for, running of your environment. And that's it. So basically, the idea is to have to provide a nice way to separate, the global configuration to the specific configuration. And of course, each module has the DI specification. So here we have a module application under the folder config. This is module.config.php. So basically, here we have an array with the key DI, the instance, and here you specify all the components for the modules, so for the application. For instance, you specify the routing, you specify the object that must be injected into the controller, the view, and whatever. So the idea is, using Zend Framework 2, that your application, the flow of your application, is completely managed by DI, by this configuration file. So it's very easy to, to say, okay, I need another object in this controller, so I just write the object here, and all the DI container is able to create the object and pass the object to the controller. So you don't have to write by hand. You don't have to use, in the Bootstrap a registry, like in Zend Framework 1, put the object in the registry and get the object from the controller. So the idea is to use always the DI to simplify the management of all the objects. Here there is the sample of the application. So we have the index controller. As you can see, there is nothing, basically. There is just one action. The name is index, the default one. We're just returning the view model, because this is an example without, any kind of business logic, any model, just, showing a static file. So the idea, the real plus, in my opinion, of Zend Framework 2 is the way to manage models that are plug and play. So you can just copy a module of another application, copy the folder inside your module directory, change something. That here I reported an example with just 3 steps. So you have to copy the module in your module or vendor folder. You have to enable the module That means just add the name of the modules in the modules specification. If we go back, for instance, this is the configuration of this application. We want to add an authentication system. Let's say the module is authentication, the name. I have just to write here another line, authentication. That's it. And the last steps is of course to copy the configuration file of the module into the config autoloading system of the application. So in just 3 steps, so copy and 2 configuration, you are able to reuse your code or code of other developers. So I think this is nice. In fact, we have a lot of contributors, a lot of people that are starting to write modules, and you can check it out, this website, modules.zenframework.com, and you will discover a lot of ready modules. For instance, the authentication system is there. You can just copy and use it. There is integration with Facebook. There is a list that is growing day by day. So even you, if you want to contribute, to share with other people your model, you can do that. Okay. Yes. Yes, sure.
First question, maybe it is stupid, it is about module directory.
Yes.
Can you go back please to this directory? So,
You mean
application, application module.
this one?
Yep. You can see that in source folder, we can have one more application folder.
Yes.
And in tutorial, we also have albums into albums.
Yes.
Why do we need this? Because we can just have a controller form.
Yes. I mean, from an aesthetic point of view, why I have to write again application here? So it's stupid. Why? The question is very technical, because in this way, we simplify a lot of code in the implementation. That means it's very fast. So if you see here, this application, the structure is, I mean, the name of application is the same here. But, you know, using this syntax under source folder, we simplify a lot the implementation. So it's just, you know, a technical motivation about that. There is not, but if you want, you can just remove this. You have to change something in the parameter of the module management system, and you can have just you know, controller or whatever. This is just, you know, a default. And by the way, this is beta, so maybe it will change it a little bit in the next version.
I just wanted to investigate your idea to understand it, because maybe we can have some different folders of this kind module, maybe some.
Actually, Matthew, the team leader of Zend Framework 2, is working to simplify all this ideas. So we have a huge collection of ideas, like the one that you like your idea, and we are trying to also to simplify the index, because if you see the index.php is 2 pages, it's too much for me. And now we are working just to reduce, you know, all this, you know, module listener. We have here load modules, event attach, aggregate, and so on. So we want to simplify the API, basically.
Just one more question.
Yes.
About models.
Yes.
As I remember, in Zend Framework 1, we had just static packages that we could get with the basic package. And many developers were making some things, and really it was hard to find something, because, you know, I'm working in a company and we had to implement some things, and we had to order them or to outsource. But really, in some months later, I was able to find them really in internet. So is the website you are showing modelzenframework.com? It is something like jQuery modules or plugins or something, or no? So the idea is that
Yes or no?
will be every developer able to upload his code there, or it
Yes.
will be very strict, like in Zend Framework 1?
No. No restriction. It's completely free. Even the source code is your GitHub account. We don't want to have a specific. So you wrote a model. You want to just add to the list. You send an email. Hey guys, I wrote this model, and we say thank you, and we insert there. So that's the flow. Very, very open. Yes.
Простите, прерываю. Давайте вопросы после презентации, потому что Энрико может не успеть и тому подобное. У нас специально выделено время, и все вопросы нужно говорить в микрофон, чтобы это дело писалось в видео. Окей?
Okay.
Enrico, continue.
I say, if you want to question, you have to come here to use the microphone.
No, I said that all questions will after presentation.
Okay, after presentation. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Just the final slide, the packaging system. So we have a packaging system in Zend Framework 2. We use Pyrus. Who knows Pyrus? This is not the right question. Who use Pyrus? Okay. Okay, Pyrus is just a tool to manage peer packages. So it's very powerful and easy way to manage peer packages. So the idea here is you can just download the Zend Framework 2 from GitHub or the official Zend Framework website. Or if you want, you can just install a couple of components, because typically not all the application that you write using Zend Framework 1 or Zend Framework 2 will use all the classes of the framework. So why have to put every time all the library with all the classes in my project? I can also customize the packaging of my application. Say, okay, I just use it, for instance, the ZFConf class, the Zend PDF or whatever. I can say, okay, I want just these components. I don't want all the library. You can use peer to do that. We provided a website, so if you go to packages.zenframework.com, you will see all the documentation, but the idea is very simple. So you get Pyrus, and we provided Pyrus here. You have to add this channel, that is packages.zenframework.com. After that, you can install a Zend component with one line with this command. So you can install, for instance, Zend config, and this Pyrus is able to collect all the dependencies of Zend config with the other classes. So, for instance, if you want to install the Zend MVC class will use a lot of other classes, and Pyrus is able to manage these dependencies. So it's a nice way to, just to install and create packages. And by the way, you can reuse this system to deploy, to package your application. So it's not just for Zend Framework 2, but even for your project. Okay, last but not least, how to think, because you have to decide if you want to migrate your application from Zend Framework 1, from Zend Framework 2, if there is a valid reason to do that. Because if you don't need, why? It's a very important question, especially for business. We are developers, so we would like to use the cool stuff, the nice, but there is, a company usually behind us that pay for, our work, so we have to be careful. But if you want to, the idea is to, of course, we are good developers, so we don't want to spend, we don't want to waste our time. Migrate without writing much code. So here I just, give you an idea. Of course, we have to refactor the namespace, because now in Zend Framework 2 we are using the PHP namespaces, so we have to change this, of course. The exceptions are managed in a different way, so we have interface in Zend Framework 2, so we are not anymore using and instantiate and inheritance Zend exception in every subclasses. We just have interfaces, so it's different. Of course, we have a new auto-loading system. You can use the Zend Framework 1 or even the other two that I showed in the beginning of the presentation. And we have a new MVC. So these are the 4 main areas where you have to migrate. We provided an example how to, basically this is an example of Matthew. An example how to use Zend Framework 2 that mimic the Zend Framework 1 workflow. So the controller, action, whatever. So basically, we provide this example that show how is it easy to write a Zend Framework 2 application that works like Zend Framework 1 application using specific events, specific model. So you can download the source code of this migration prototype. Okay, I am basically complete my presentation. Here we just reported a couple of URL that you can use to know more about Zend Framework 2. I strongly suggest to have a look to this Getting Started with Zend Framework 2 by Rob Allen, that is one of the contributor of the framework. He provides a very nice PDF, a very nice tutorial, step by step, how to install the Zend Skeleton application, how to start to write. It's very, very nice work. We have every week an ERC meeting, so you are more than welcome to join our meeting. Actually, for Russian, I guess is 10 p.m. because for me it's 8 p.m. So it's 2 hours. It's 3, but we have 12. Okay. So sorry for that, but we are a worldwide project, so. And we have every day on ERC ZF Talk 2, so you can join and ask questions. Okay, we have time? I have no idea. Yes, we have time. Question?
So, Enrico, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enrico, my question about using Zend Skeleton application. I can clone this repository and start develop self-application.
Okay.
But I see all the commits. I don't want see this. What I must do? What best practice start write self-application?
Yeah, I mean, Zend Framework 2 is in beta. So that means no one in the world right now have a real answer to your question. My feeling is after the beta 4, that will be the next version of the beta, we will start to improve the Zend Skeleton application to provide a real example using, for instance, model. I mean, a real application. And by the way, Matthew has started to write a blog application And in fact, the website of Matthew is built using this system. And we want to release this blog application using, like a new version of Zend and Zend skeleton application. So you have to wait a few weeks. Sorry for that, but we are working on. As you can imagine, we want to complete the Zend framework, and after we want to provide a good example, good reference guide. And by the way, if you want to contribute, please help us, because we need, we have a lot of work to do. And even for, if you have an idea how to arrange a better tree folder, a better skeleton, if you have some use cases you want to share, please send an email to me or to the other guys, and we are very, very exciting to know your opinion and to share with all of you the idea. Because of course, we are trying that the goal behind a framework like Zend Framework is very huge. So we are trying to build a framework that is able to solve most of the use cases, the scenarios for web application. It's not an easy task, as you can imagine. So your feedback are the best feedback that we can have, because you are a developer that want to use the framework that we built. So that's the only way to improve open source code. Communicate, sharing. So
I see, thanks.
Thank you. Other question? Oh, very far. Oh, here.
Hello. I have a question. I heard about event system will be also included in the framework 1.12.
Yes.
Is it true?
Yeah, it's true. But just as classes. So you have a Zend Event Manager class. We are not going to change the MVC of Zend Framework 1. So you have this class, and if you want, you can use it. But we are not changing, of course, the MVC of Zend Framework 1.
And it will be useful? It will be working okay with Zend Framework 1?
Yes. I mean, if you want, for instance, if you have, to be honest, right now I don't have any use cases in mind, but it's just a class, event manager. So if you, for instance, in a controller, you can say, okay, in this controller, I want to use the event manager classes to change the action, to change the flow of inside the controller. So you can instantiate the event manager and assign on-the-fly events that are, trigger when an event occurs. So there are for sure a lot of use cases, but right now, we are just releasing the event manager classes.
Okay, thank you.
Other question?
In your example of MVC, you've mentioned a view model class.
Yeah.
Could you please explain in a few words what is it? What's its
Yeah.
purpose?
Okay, so thanks for this question, because this is very interesting. So basically, in Zend Framework 1, we had the layout and the view. In Zend Framework 2, we have just view, because the view is a model. The idea of view is like a tree, so we can have view with the parent, another view, with the child, another view. So you can build a tree of view. That means you can have a multiple layout system. So the view model is the class that is able to manage this organization. So for instance, if you want to translate the layout with the new view model, you have two view. One is the parent of the other. That's it.
So the view model is a view itself and a container of another view.
Yes. Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Enrique, I'm sure you know that in PHP 5.4,
Yes.
there is one cool stuff.
Traits.
Traits, yes.
Yes.
Will you use it in Zend Framework 2?
No, because we want to support PHP 5.3.
But wouldn't it be better to require PHP 5.4 and use traits?
Yeah, this is a very good question. We had a huge week of meeting about this, just this question. And after we come out that the best decision is to support PHP 5.3 because not all the people wants to migrate to PHP 5.4 right now. So
Okay,
it was a community decision. But there is an idea. This is very strange idea. Let me say, people are saying, okay, but we want to use traits because they're very nice, very cool. We can reduce a lot of code. We know all the motivation behind traits, and say, okay, why we don't release Zend Framework 2 traits?
Yeah,
A special
Zend
version.
Framework 3.
Yes, and there is a couple of guys that are proposing this and are starting to work. So.
Okay, and one few question about view model. Here in example, you in the controller just write return view model.
Yes.
Isn't it dependency injection or I?
Yeah, because there is nothing to inject.
Yes.
There's just a static page. But you're right. If you want to, you can use DI to inject even in the view object, or you can pass directly in a construct of the class, the parameter, or the object that you need.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We have time? No. 5 minutes. Okay. Other question? There is a question here.
Hi Enrico.
Hi.
Buongiorno.
Grazie. Buongiorno. Come stai?
Bene. Well, I want to ask why it took so long time to write Zend Framework 2,
Okay.
and it's still not released.
Yeah.
And also, how many Zend employees working on Zend Framework? So, how many on-site developers are working, and how many contributors are working on Zend 2 right now?
So 3 questions. First, why we are spending so long time to release Zend Framework 2? Because we are a little community, to be honest, and we want to provide the better code as possible. So we have no timeline. When the code is good, we release it. That's the philosophy behind Zend Framework. Of course, we have to release something, and that's why typically we have also a review in the community. So we have people that say, okay, we want to implement this feature. We have a lot of feedback. We have meeting. So there is a lot of interaction. So that's why, if you compare the other framework, that is, to be honest, Symfony. Symfony is more, strict. Okay, we release this, we do that. There is interaction with the community, but Zend Framework is more community-oriented. So that's why we are spending more time. Second question, how many employees paid by Zend work on Zend Framework 2? 3. Me, Matthew, and Ralph. The contributor is huge, the community. We have 300 developers that commit. The active people are 30. So that's 30, 40. That's the number.
Thank you.